Wait. Something was said about you in a conversation you were never supposed to hear. And no, it wasn't casual at all. It wasn't light, and it wasn't something they forgot right after speaking. The moment your name entered that space, the atmosphere changed. The person you care about deeply spoke about you with a depth they had been trying hard to hide for a long time, and the one listening noticed it instantly. There was a pause before they replied, a silence that said more than any sentence could, because sometimes the truth is not only in words, but in the delay between them. When your name came up, something inside them shifted right away. Their voice changed slightly, their expression softened for a brief second before they tried to control it again. They wanted to appear unaffected. They wanted it to look like you were just another part of the past, just another memory that had already faded. But the person in front of them could feel something else underneath all of it. Because when someone talks about a person who still lives in their heart, the body reacts before logic can cover it. That is exactly what happened. The moment your name was spoken, their entire energy shifted in a way they could not fully hide. Because no matter how much they tried to act normal, you were never just a random thought to them. You are not temporary in their mind. You are not easily replaceable. You are the one their thoughts return to when everything gets quiet. The memory that appears in the middle of normal days without warning. The presence they try to find in other people but never fully feel again. And the listener noticed every detail. They saw the small smile that appeared without permission. They noticed the warmth in their tone, even while they tried to stay guarded. They heard how every sentence about you felt incomplete, like something was left unsaid but heavily felt. Then came a moment that changed everything. The listener leaned in and asked directly, "Do they still matter to you that much?" And suddenly everything went silent inside them. Because when something means nothing, the answer is quick. But when something means everything, silence comes first. That silence revealed more than any explanation ever could. They were not trying to decide what they felt. They were trying to control how much truth would slip out. And then it happened. Not planned, not controlled, just honest. They admitted that no matter how much time passes, your presence never fully disappears from them. Even in distance, even in silence, something in them still turns toward you. Real connection does not vanish just because communication stops. Instead, your absence has made your presence feel even stronger inside them. Every attempt to move forward only made them realize how deeply you affected them in the first place. The feeling had been building quietly for a long time until it finally became too heavy to hide, and the listener could feel it clearly. Then another question came. If they still matter this much, why aren't you with them? That question froze everything because it demanded truth without protection. They looked away and finally said under their breath that the bond between you has never truly ended, not even once. Some connections don't fade with time. They grow louder, and yours did exactly that. Then something even heavier came out of them, almost breaking through their control. I keep wondering if I let go of someone I was never supposed to lose. That wasn't just reflection. That was realization starting to wake up inside them. After that conversation, nothing stayed the same. That night, they couldn't escape their own thoughts. They tried everything to distract themselves. They scrolled their phone without focus. They played music just to fill silence. They tried talking, tried shifting attention, tried normal routines, but nothing worked. Because once truth is spoken out loud, it stops hiding. When they finally got home, the silence felt heavier than usual. It wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with everything they had admitted but couldn't undo. Your presence kept returning in their thoughts again and again. Small memories, simple moments, things they never thought would matter this much, and now they do. Distance didn't weaken anything, it sharpened it. Silence didn't erase you, it made you louder inside them. Time didn't reduce your importance, it revealed it. And at night, when everything gets quiet, the truth becomes unavoidable. They found themselves remembering you in the simplest ways, the comfort your presence once gave, the ease they didn't recognize at the time. Comment 111 if you feel someone has been holding feelings for you longer than they admit. And if you are still here, type yes, because what comes next is even deeper than this. Experiencing life without that connection has slowly become something they can no longer ignore. Your absence is no longer just silence, it has turned into awareness. It is teaching them in a very direct way what they actually lost, even if they refused to admit it before. And now, every memory connected to you feels more alive than ever. Not distant, not faded, but emotionally active, like it is happening again inside their mind. That is what realization does. It reshapes the past and brings it into the present. And inside them, something is shifting in a way they cannot fully control anymore. The thoughts are no longer passing through. They are staying, they are repeating, they are growing heavier with each quiet moment. Even when they try to focus on daily life, there is a pull back toward you again and again. And this is not random anymore. It feels structured, like their heart is trying to finish something their mind left incomplete. Stay with this moment because it explains everything that follows. Something inside them is waking up that they thought was already gone. After that earlier conversation replayed in their mind enough times, they reached a private conclusion they never expected to face again. They cannot keep pretending at the same level they used to, not after hearing their own hesitation exposed through their reactions. Every pause they made, every unfinished sentence, every controlled expression is now being reanalyzed by them in silence. And the more they think, the more they see how much they were avoiding instead of healing. For a long time, they believed distance would finish what emotions started. They thought time would soften everything, erase attachment, and replace it with indifference. But it did not happen that way. Instead, your presence kept returning in fragments, in sounds, in places, in ordinary moments that suddenly felt personal for no clear reason. And each time they pushed it away, convincing themselves it meant nothing. But now, after that honest moment slipped out of them, denial is no longer as strong. The truth survived every attempt to suppress it. It survived silence. It survived pride. It survived time. And that realization is both grounding and unsettling for them at the same time. Because now they are standing between two emotional forces. One is comfort, the idea of staying distant and controlled. The other is fear, the fear of losing something they are finally beginning to understand was meaningful beyond surface level. And that balance is breaking. The questions inside them are getting louder every day. What if this was real all along? What if they misunderstood what they felt at the time? What if walking away did not end the connection, but only paused it? These thoughts are no longer occasional, they are constant. They show up in silence, in random memories, in the middle of normal routines when nothing else is happening. And slowly, the idea of reaching out does not feel as impossible as before. It feels inevitable, like something they have been delaying rather than avoiding forever. Their emotional resistance is weakening because truth, once fully seen, does not stay quiet again. It demands movement. It demands honesty. And now, for the first time, silence feels heavier than vulnerability ever did. If you are still following this, stay with it, because the shift is not over yet. The distance between you was never created by a lack of feeling. It came from fear. Fear of being emotionally exposed. Fear of needing someone this deeply. Fear of what would happen if they truly surrendered to what they felt for you. Because real connection does not leave a person unchanged. It transforms them from within, and your bond was never light enough to be forgotten easily. You awakened parts of them that had been silent for years. A sense of hope, a sense of depth, a desire for something real instead of temporary distractions. One part of them wanted that experience completely, but another part became overwhelmed and scared, creating an inner struggle they could not handle. Now they are starting to see clearly that they were not running from you. They were running from their own feelings, and that changes everything they thought they understood about the past. Stay with this because it explains the emotional shift that is happening right now. They are beginning to realize something they avoided for a long time. You were never difficult to love. You were difficult to forget. And that difference is now becoming painfully clear in their mind. Recently, their thoughts have started creating scenarios they once pushed away completely, moments where they imagine talking to you again, wondering how you would respond, wondering if there is still warmth there, and underneath all of that is a deeper fear, the fear that too much time may have passed, that life may have taken you emotionally further away than they expected. That thought stays with them longer than anything else, because meaningful connections are rare and losing one through hesitation creates a kind of regret that does not fade easily. Their emotional world is no longer longer neutral. It is shifting. They are not just remembering you anymore. They are re-evaluating your place in their entire life. This is why their emotional energy feels different lately. It is no longer passive memory. It is active reconsideration. Every quiet moment without contact feels incomplete, like something was left unfinished. And that unfinished feeling is becoming harder for them to ignore. They are reaching a stage where silence does not feel protective anymore. It feels heavy, even uncomfortable. And the idea of avoiding you is starting to hurt more than the idea of reaching out. Because every attempt to move forward without you ends up circling back mentally to the same point, you. This is not random. It is emotional momentum building over time. And when that happens, internal resistance starts to weaken. Their thoughts are no longer only about distance. They are about meaning, about value, about what this connection actually represented in their life. They are also beginning to notice something they could not admit before. Other people may distract them for a moment, but none of those interactions carry your emotional imprint. None of them feel the same. None of them create that depth or familiarity they experienced with you. And that comparison is happening automatically inside them now, even without intention. It is not about choosing between people. It is about realizing that certain connections leave a permanent mark, and you became that mark in their emotional memory. Because of this, even their future thoughts are changing direction. What once felt uncertain now feels like it is slowly pointing back toward you. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but naturally, like something returning to its origin. And if you are still here, pay attention, because this is where the energy shifts again. They are approaching a point where avoidance no longer works the same way. The emotional weight of unspoken feelings is becoming too strong to hold quietly. They are replaying old moments with a different awareness now, seeing things they did not understand at the time, recognizing the value of what was present before it became absence. Your presence brought them something rare, emotional safety, depth, a feeling of being understood without explanation. And now that it is gone, the silence feels different. It feels unnatural. The heart cannot stay quiet forever when something unfinished remains inside it. And this is exactly why their thoughts keep circling back to you again and again. Because some connections do not fade. They wait to be understood. The distance between you was never created because feelings were missing. It was created because fear stepped in and took control at the wrong moments. Fear of being fully seen, fear of emotional vulnerability, fear of what it would mean to need someone this deeply and still not be able to control the outcome. Because real connection does not allow a person to stay the same. It changes how they think, how they feel, how they react to silence, and how they experience absence. And your connection was never light enough to be ignored or easily stored away in the background. It reached deeper than that. It activated parts of them that had been quiet for years. A sense of emotional honesty they were not used to. A sense of hope they had almost stopped trusting. A sense that something real and meaningful still existed beyond surface-level interactions. One part of them wanted to move closer to that completely, but another part became overwhelmed by the intensity of it all, creating a silent internal conflict they never properly expressed. Now they are slowly realizing something they avoided for a long time. They were not only stepping away from you, they were stepping away from their own emotional depth at the same time. And this realization is not gentle for them, it is disruptive, because they are now seeing how often they confused fear with clarity, how often they told themselves that distance was necessary, when in reality it was emotional protection. You were never difficult to love in the way they once assumed. You were difficult to forget, and that difference is becoming clearer inside their mind with every passing day. Lately, their thoughts have started creating moments they never allowed before. Quiet imagined situations where contact is restored, where a simple message could reopen something they once left unfinished. And underneath those thoughts is a deeper concern that they cannot fully silence anymore. The feeling that too much time may have passed quietly while they were still trying to understand their own emotions. That uncertainty stays with them longer than expected. Because meaningful bonds are rare, and when one is lost through hesitation rather than lack of love, the emotional weight of that realization becomes heavier over time. They are no longer simply remembering you as a memory. They are reconsidering you as a presence that still holds importance in their emotional structure. This is why everything feels different for them now. It is no longer passive reflection. It is active awareness. Every quiet moment without interaction feels unfinished, like something important is still waiting to be addressed. And that unfinished feeling grows stronger when distractions fade. They are reaching a stage where silence no longer feels like protection. it feels like pressure. The idea of not reaching out is slowly becoming more uncomfortable than the idea of being emotionally open again. Their mind keeps returning to the same point no matter where they try to redirect it. You, not as a passing thought, but as something emotionally anchored. And this is where the shift becomes important, because when emotional resistance weakens, clarity starts replacing confusion. They begin noticing things they once ignored, the way your presence affected their emotional stability, the way your absence feels louder than expected, the way no other connection seems to match that same depth. And slowly, their internal narrative is changing without force, not rushed, not dramatic, but steady and unavoidable. Now they are standing in a space where emotional avoidance no longer works the same way it used to. The weight of unspoken feelings is becoming too consistent to ignore. Old memories are no longer distant, they feel active, almost present. And with each recollection, understanding grows. They are starting to see the value of what they once had more clearly than before. The comfort, the emotional safety, the sense of being understood without explanation. These are not easily replaced experiences, and now the absence of them is becoming noticeable in their daily emotional world. This is why their thoughts keep circling back to you even when they try to move forward. Because some connections are not designed to disappear, they are designed to be understood over time, and once that understanding begins, silence becomes harder to maintain than honesty ever was. If you are still here, stay with this, because the emotional shift is not slowing down anymore. The distance between you was never created by a lack of feeling. It was created because fear quietly took control at the moments that mattered most. Fear of vulnerability, fear of emotional exposure, fear of what it would mean to fully admit how deeply someone can affect you. Because real connection does not leave a person unchanged. It reshapes their inner world in ways they do not always understand at first. And your connection was never small enough to stay on the surface. It went deeper than that. It reached places inside them that had been untouched for years. It brought forward emotions they had buried long ago, like hope, emotional honesty, and the desire for something real instead of temporary comfort. One part of them wanted to move toward that completely, but another part became overwhelmed by its intensity, creating a silent inner struggle they never openly expressed. And now, with time passing, they are slowly realizing something they avoided for far too long. They were not only distancing themselves from you, they were also distancing themselves from their own emotional truth without fully realizing it. Stay with this moment, because this is where everything starts to make sense. This realization is not calm for them. It is uncomfortable, even unsettling, because they are now seeing how often they misread their own emotions and called it logic or timing. How often fear disguised itself as clarity, and how often distance felt safer than honesty. You were never difficult to love in the way they once convinced themselves. You were difficult to forget, and that difference is becoming more obvious to them with every passing day. Lately, their mind has started creating thoughts they used to shut down immediately. Imagined conversations. Small scenarios where contact is re-established. Moments where a simple message could change everything they left unresolved. And underneath all of this is a deeper worry they cannot ignore anymore. The feeling that too much time may have passed while they were still trying to understand what they truly felt. That uncertainty lingers in their mind longer than expected, especially in quiet moments. Because meaningful connections do not disappear easily, especially when they were never fully closed with understanding or clarity. Instead, they remain, reshaping themselves inside memory, becoming stronger in reflection than they ever were in real time. This is why their emotional state feels different now. It is no longer passive remembering. It is active reconsideration. Every quiet moment without contact feels like something unfinished, like a sentence that was never completed. And that unfinished feeling becomes louder when everything else is silent. They are entering a stage where silence no longer feels protective. It feels heavy, almost pressuring. And the idea of continuing to avoid you is slowly becoming more emotionally uncomfortable than the idea of being open. Their thoughts keep returning to the same point again and again, not because they are forcing it, but because something inside them refuses to move forward without closure. You are no longer just a memory in their mind. You are becoming a presence they are actively reassessing. And this shift is subtle, but powerful. At the same time, they are beginning to notice things they previously overlooked. How your presence once made emotional life feel stable in a way they did not fully appreciate. How your absence now feels louder than expected, not because of dramatic loss, but because of emotional contrast. How other connections feel different, lighter, almost incomplete in comparison. And slowly, without pressure, their internal perspective is changing. They are no longer asking only, what happened, but also, what did this actually mean? And that question changes everything. Because once someone starts assigning meaning to what they once dismissed, emotional clarity begins to form. Memories that once felt ordinary now feel significant. Moments they once minimized now feel important. And this is where emotional resistance starts weakening naturally. Not because they are being pushed, but because truth has a way of becoming harder to ignore the more it is reflected on. Now they are standing in a space where avoidance no longer works the way it used to. The weight of unspoken emotions is no longer something they can push aside easily. It follows them into quiet moments, into distractions, into everything they try to focus on. And with each return of those thoughts, understanding becomes clearer. They are starting to recognize the emotional value of what was present before it turned into absence. The comfort, the depth, the feeling of being understood without effort. These are not experiences that can be easily replaced, and now their absence is becoming more noticeable than ever. That is why their thoughts keep circling back to you, even when they try not to. Because some connections are not meant to fade through avoidance. They are meant to be understood through reflection. And once that reflection begins, silence becomes harder to maintain than honesty ever was. The distance between you was never formed because the connection was weak or because feelings were missing. It formed because fear quietly stepped in at the exact moment things started becoming emotionally real. Fear of vulnerability, fear of losing control, fear of being seen too deeply by someone who mattered too much. Because real connection does not allow emotional neutrality. It changes how a person thinks, how they respond to silence, how they process absence, and how they carry memories afterward. And what you shared was never light enough to stay surface level. It reached deeper than that. It touched emotional layers they had not accessed in a long time. It brought out feelings like emotional safety, attachment, longing, and a quiet hope for something stable and real. One part of them wanted to move closer to that completely, without hesitation. But another part became overwhelmed by the intensity of their own emotions, creating an internal conflict they never fully admitted. And now, with time and distance, they are beginning to understand something they did not see before. They were not only stepping away from you, they were stepping away from their own emotional truth at the same time. And that realization is slowly reshaping how they see everything that happened. This realization is not gentle for them. It is disruptive and emotionally uncomfortable. Because they are now seeing how often fear disguised itself as logic in their decisions. How often they convinced themselves that distance was the right choice, when in reality it was emotional avoidance. You were never difficult to love in the way they once believed. You were difficult to forget, and that difference is becoming more obvious inside their mind with every passing day. Lately, their thoughts have started going into places they used to avoid completely. Imagined conversations that feel almost real, moments where they picture reaching out, scenarios where a single message could reopen something they never fully closed. And beneath all of that is a deeper concern they cannot ignore anymore. The quiet fear that too much time may have passed while they were still trying to emotionally understand what they felt. That uncertainty stays longer than expected, especially when everything around them becomes quiet, because meaningful connections do not simply disappear when ignored. Instead, they settle into memory and slowly grow stronger in reflection than they ever were in the moment. This is why their emotional world feels different now. It is no longer passive remembering. It is active reassessment. Every quiet moment without contact feels incomplete, like something essential was never finished. And that unfinished feeling becomes more noticeable when distractions fade. They are entering a stage where silence no longer feels protective. It feels heavy, almost like pressure building internally. And the idea of continuing avoidance is slowly becoming more emotionally difficult than the idea of honesty. Their thoughts keep returning to you repeatedly, not because they are forcing it, but because something inside them refuses to let go of unresolved meaning. You are no longer just a memory they revisit occasionally. You are becoming a presence they are reevaluating in real time. And this shift is subtle but deeply important. At the same time, they are noticing things they previously ignored, how your presence once created emotional balance they did not fully recognize at the time, how your absence now feels more significant than expected, not because of dramatic loss, but because of emotional contrast, how other connections feel less grounded, less meaningful in comparison, and slowly their internal perspective is shifting without force or pressure. They are no longer only asking what happened, but why it mattered so deeply. And that question changes everything. Because once meaning enters reflection, emotional clarity begins to form. Moments that once felt ordinary now feel important. Words they once dismissed now carry weight. Silence that once felt neutral now feels unfinished. And this is where emotional resistance begins to weaken naturally, not through pressure, but through understanding.